हेलो बच्चों। CBSE क्लास 10th सेक्शन 1 चैप्टर 2 पार्ट 4 द कम्युनिस्ट मूवमेंट एंड वियतनामीज nationalism. The Great Depression of the 1930s had a profound impact on Vietnam. The prices of rubber and rice fell, leading to rising rural debts, unemployment, and rural uprisings, such as in the provinces of Naguilian and Ha Tinh. These provinces are among the poorest, had an old radical tradition, and have been called the electrical fuses of Vietnam. When the system was under pressure, they were the first to blow. The French put these uprisings down with great severity, even using planes to bomb demonstrators. In February 1930, Ho Chi Minh brought together competing nationalist groups to establish the Vietnamese Communist Vietnam Con San Dai Party, later renamed the Indo-Chinese Communist Party. He was inspired by the militant demonstrations of the European Communist parties. In 1940, Japan occupied Vietnam as part of its imperial drive to control Southeast Asia. So nationalists now had to fight against the Japanese always as well as the French. The League for Independence of Vietnam, Vietnam Doc Lap Dong Minh, which came to be known as the Viet Minh, fought the Japanese occupation and recaptured Hanoi in September 1945. The Democratic Republic of Vietnam was formed and Ho Chi Minh became chairman. The new republic faced a number of challenges. The French tried to regain control by using the Emperor Bao Dai as their puppet. Faced with the French offensive, the Viet Minh were forced to retreat to the hills. After 8 years of fighting, the French were defeated in 1954 at Dien Bien Phu. The supreme French commander of the French armies, General Henry Navarre, had declared confidently in 1953 that they would soon be victorious. But on 7th May 1954, the Viet Minh annihilated and captured more than 16,000 soldiers on the French Expeditionary Corps. The entire commanding staff, including a general, 16 colonels, and 1,749 officers, were taken prisoner. In the peace negotiation in Geneva that followed the French defeat, the Vietnamese were persuaded to accept the division of the country. North and South were split. Ho Chi Minh and the communists took power in the north while Bao Dai's regime was put in power in the south. This division set in motion a series of events that turned Vietnam into a battlefield, bringing death and destruction to its people as well as the environment. The Bao Dai regime was soon overthrown by the coup led uh, by Nguyen Dinh Diem. Diem built a repressive and authoritarian government. Anyone who opposed him was called a communist and was jailed and killed. They have retained Ordinance 10, a French law that permitted Christianity but outlawed Buddhism. His dictatorial rule came to be opposed by a broad opposition united under the banner of the National Liberation Front. With the help of the Ho Chi Minh government in the north, the NLF fought for the unification of the country. The US watched this alliance with fear. Worried about communists gaining power, it decided to intervene decisively, sending in troops and arms. The entry of the US into the war US entry into the war marked a new phase that proved costly to the Vietnamese as well as to the Americans. From 1965 to 1972, over 34 lakh 3,100 US services personnel served in Vietnam. 7,484 were women. Even though the US had advanced technology and good medical supplies, casualties were high. About 47,244 died in battle and 3,03,704 were wounded. Of those wounded, 23,014 were listed by the Vietnamese Veterans Administration to be 100% disabled. This phase of struggle with the US was brutal. Thousands of US troops arrived equipped with heavy weapons and tanks and backed by the most powerful bombers of the time, B 52s. The widespread attacks and use of chemical weapons napalm, Agent Orange, and phosphorus bombs destroyed many villages and decimated jungles. Civilians died in large numbers. The effect of the war was felt within the US as well. Many were critical of the government for getting involved in a war that they saw as indefensible. When the youth were drafted for the war, the anger spread. Compulsory service in the armed forces, however, could be waived for university graduates. This meant that many of those sent to fight did not belong to the privileged elite but were minorities and children of working class families. The US media and films played a major role in both supporting as well as criticizing the war. Hollywood made films in support of the war, such as John Wayne Green's Barrett 1968. This has been cited by many as an example of an unthinking propaganda film that was responsible for motivating many young men to die in the war. Other films were more critical as they tried to understand the reasons for this war. John Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, 1979, reflected the moral confusion that the war had caused in the US. The war grew out of a fear among US policy planners that the victory of the Ho Chi Minh government would start a domino effect. Communist governments would be established in other countries in the area. They underestimated the power of nationalism to move people to action, inspired them to sacrifice their home and family, live under horrific conditions, and fight for independence. They underestimated the power of a small country to fight the most technologically advanced country in the world. The Ho Chi Minh Trail. The story of the Ho Chi Minh Trail is one of the understanding the nature of the war that Vietnamese fought against the US. It symbolizes how the Vietnamese used their limited resources to great advantage. The trail, an immense network of footpaths and roads, was used to transport men and materials from the north to the south. The trail was improved from the late 1950s and from 1967 about 20,000 North Vietnamese troops came south each month on this trail. The trails had supported bases and hospitals along the way. In some parts, supplies were transported in trucks, but mostly they were carried by porters, who were mainly women. These porters carried about 25 kilos on their backs or about 70 kilos on their bicycles. Most of the trail was outside Vietnam in neighboring Laos and Cambodia, with branch lines extending into South Vietnam. The US regularly bombed this trail, trying to disrupt supplies, but efforts to destroy this important supply line by intensive bombing failed because they were revealed very quickly. Okay, so this is chapter 2 finished over here. See you in the next video.